March 4th, 2019 regular meeting of the Newbury School District Board of Education is called to order. This meeting is being held in accordance with Section 3313.15 of the Ohio Revised Code. Mrs. Palmer, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Matthews?
Here.
Mr. Sanders?
Here.
Mr. Sedeby?
Here.
Mr. Simpkins? Mrs. Zock?
Here. I'd like to welcome everyone to the March 4th, 2019 regular meeting of the Newbury School District Board of Education. Prior to this evening, each board member has received for their review and consideration the agenda and materials associated with each agenda item for the board's approval. The public can access the agenda through the district's website. The agenda is available through the district's website for public viewing Friday prior to the board meeting. Board members have the opportunity to call the superintendent and treasurer for information concerning agenda items and to request, if needed, additional information. There are two places on the agenda when the board entertains comments from the community. The first hearing of the public is dedicated to those who wish to address the board on agenda items only. The second hearing of the public is dedicated to those who wish to address the board on any subject you wish to speak about, whether it be on an item on the agenda or in another issue. When addressing the board, please state your name, and comments are limited to 5 minutes. please address questions to the president. Please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Are there any additional questions or corrections to tonight's agenda? Now let's move on to the approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to approve? So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Mr. Sedeby?
Yes.
Mr. Simpkins? Mrs. Zock?
Yes. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Okay. Is there a motion? So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Mr. Sedeby?
Yes.
Mr. Simpkins? Mrs. Zock?
Yes. At this time, is there anyone who'd like to address the board on agenda items only? Okay, the superintendent's report and recommendations.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. I'd like to recommend approval of the donation listed under 7A on your agenda.
Is there a motion? So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Mr. Sedeby?
Yes.
Mr. Simpkins? Mrs. Zock?
Yes.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, I just want to report that our well is in working order after we experienced some problems and had to close school for several days. As far as calamity days, we are in good shape since the state has gone from days to hours. We still have 9.6 days for high school students and 17 for elementary. I know there was some concern we might run out of calamity days, so we're okay there. As promised, our website has been updated with the section about the proposed territory transfer, and I encourage everyone to go to the site and get information and to submit questions that they might like to see answered on that website. Next on the agenda, last month we had first readings of 3 policies listed under agenda item 7B2. Tonight I'd like to recommend approval of policies 1422, 2271, and 6423.
Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion on those policies? Okay.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Mr. Sedeby?
Yes.
Mr. Simpkins? Mrs. Zock?
Yes.
So next on the agenda are first readings of 16 additional policies. All of these policy changes are necessary to put us in compliance with the law. I know you've had time to review them since I sent them to you beforehand, but just to highlight a few, policy 2700 is rescinding our current school report card policy and replacing it with 2261.03, which reflects the current ODE report card and all the different sections of the report card. Policies 5610.02, 5611, and 5610 all have been revised to reflect compliance with House Bill 318, which deals with restrictions with student discipline, including specific discipline expectations for students in K through 3. So those are just a few highlights. There's no vote required since this is a first reading. Do you have any questions? Okay, so next on the agenda is a recommendation to approve the final draft of our safety plan. The safety plan was completed by one of our strategic plan committee, led by Mr. Shafee.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Questions?
Miss,
I was just saying it was really thorough.
The committee did a great job with it.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Mr. Sedeby?
Yes.
Mr. Simpkins? Mrs. Zock?
Yes.
Agenda item B5 is a recommendation to approve the academic team trip to Chicago from Friday, May 3rd through Sunday, May 5th. and the 2019 NAQT Small School National Championship Tournament.
Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
Mrs. Matthews,
Yes.
Mr. Sanders,
Yes.
Mr. Sedeby,
Yes.
Mr. Simpkins, Mrs. Zoll.
Yes.
And Madam President, members of the board, I'd like to recommend approval of personnel agenda items C1 through C8.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Matthews,
Yes.
Mr. Sanders,
Yes.
Mr. Sedeby,
Yes.
Mr. Simpkins, Mrs. Zoll.
As we reorganize our custodial staff, I'd like to recommend approval of the job description for a groundskeeper. I sent that to you.
Yes. Yep. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. So this was, it's a 9-month
Correct, 9-month position,
position, and focusing just on that.
just on fields and grounds.
Maybe including parking lots or just.
And parking lots, anything outside.
Thank you. Anything else?
Mrs. Matthews,
Yes.
Mr. Sanders,
Yes.
Mr. Sedeby,
Yes.
Mr. Simpkins, Mrs. Zoll.
Yes.
Next on the agenda is a recommendation to approve a revised list of substitute wages. The substitute teacher wage has not been increased since July 2015, and the classified substitute wages have not been increased for even more years than that. In order for us to be competitive with our neighboring districts, I'd like to recommend a raise in those wages.
Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion or questions?
I appreciate that you explained how hard it was to find subs because of our wage structure, that when you put things into perspective, we're not even paying enough to get a substitute today. So thank you for willing to go with that.
Thanks. Well, we did not have one substitute custodian on our list.
Okay. Mrs. Matthews,
Yes.
Mr. Sanders,
Yes.
Mr. Sedeby,
Yes.
Mr. Simpkins, Mrs. Zoll.
Yes.
Okay, now I'd like to move to the presentation part of the agenda. So I'd like to begin with Mrs. Tomasetti, who is going to recognize the elementary students of the month.
Good evening, Dr. Blanks, Madam President, members of the board. I have the last 2 months of our students in the month, so for the month of January and the month of February. In January, students were recognized by our office staff, Ms. Levine, and myself. The following students were recognized by Ms. Levine. The first one is Maddie Supel, who is a kindergartner, and Ms. Levine said that she's a joy to interact with. She's always smiling whenever she sees her. And when she brings the lunch count to the office with her classmates, she shows cooperation by making sure she waits for them. She sees her work hard at everything she does, and Maddie's a great example of what a Black Knight should represent. The following 4 students were knighted by myself. The first one is Jordan Green. He's a new student at Newbury. He immediately fit right into our school. He consistently shows integrity by always making good choices. He shows excellence by always working hard, and he shows cooperation with his classmates. He's a polite, respectful young man. Second one is a 4th grader. Her name is Allison Quinn. And Allison has worked really hard this year on being a true Black Knight. She's learned how to work through challenges with a better attitude, and she's used the tools to help her make good choices in the classroom. I'm proud of all the effort Allison has demonstrated this year. Another 4th grade student that I had the pleasure of knighting 2 months ago was Aiden Griggy. Aiden has made so much improvement this year since September in all areas. He's worked hard to stay on task, but has also learned how to accept help from adults so that he can be successful in the classroom. Aiden has worked on friendships this year and has been very helpful to staff members throughout the day. And the last student was a 5th grader. Her name is London Kaputa. And I said that she's a true Black Knight. She comes to school every day with a positive attitude. She demonstrates integrity by making good choices. She shows cooperation by always being a good friend to her classmates, and shows excellence by doing her best all the time. She greets everyone with a smile or a hug and is a positive person to be around. And those were our students in the month from January. And now, February, the students were knighted by their teachers. From kindergarten was Callie Walker, and her teacher said that she shows integrity daily by following classroom and school rules. She works well with others and takes pride in her schoolwork. From 1st grade was Ivy Grubbs, and her teacher said that she always shows the qualities of a nice Black Knight. She's a great model to her classmates, and she's always on task and takes a lot of pride in her work, and she has grown very much this year. From 2nd grade, and she's here tonight, Addie Menard. Come on up, Addie. And her teacher said that she consistently shows pride in her work and the way she treats her classmates and teachers. She always completes her homework and classwork and is always raising her hand to participate and share in class. From 3rd grade was Aaliyah Grable, and her teacher said that Aaliyah demonstrates the nice qualities each day in class. She has grown as an independent reader and is showing more initiative in math class. From 4th grade was Matthew Mirabile, and his teacher said that he has shown excellent perseverance throughout the month of January. When faced with a challenge, Matt embraced it and sets examples for others. He's been making good progress both in the classroom and other areas in the school. From 5th grade was Julia Hummer, and her teacher said that she is so kind and always doing the right thing. Julia is always polite and always has a kind smile on her face. She takes pride in her work and truly sets a good example for her peers. From Title I, Mrs. Cerny knighted Rebecca Paradise, and I know that she's here as well. Come on up, Rebecca. And Mrs. Cerny said that Rebecca has been a pleasure to have in class all year long. She's eager to learn and participate in group discussions, and Rebecca is always following directions and a joy to have in class. Her energy and love of learning is contagious, and she's a real Black Knight. Mrs. Lieblich knighted Sarah Wengard, and she said that Sarah has shown integrity by doing what is right. She shows cooperation with her peers and excellence in her daily work. And Sarah has really improved overall since she has been here at Newbury. Mrs. Zuzi knighted Nancy Wengard, and she said that Nancy continually demonstrates and models integrity to all peers by attending groups prepared and timely, turns in assignments on time, and asks for help when she doesn't understand something. She also demonstrates excellence by challenging herself to read more and attempts all difficult math problems purely to improve herself. And last but not least, Mrs. Horvitz knighted Shyla Stokes, and she said that Shyla is a true nice Black Knight. All school year she's been demonstrating excellence in her academics and has developed into a confident and excited reader. She's proud of Shyla's growth and is excited to see what she can accomplish in the future. And those are our students of the month for the months of January and February.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Shakey will recognize our junior and senior high distinguished students.
Thank you. We have a couple of students with us tonight, so I'd like to bring them down first. First, we have Kyle Sheehan. Kyle was recognized as a distinguished student by Mr. Keating because of his reliability and how consistent he is, and most importantly, what a great classmate he is to his peers. And our second student that's with us tonight is Isabella Fugo. Isabella was recognized by Mr. Griesmer for her academic excellence and, more importantly, for her high character. Congratulations. And our other students were from the Mrs. Baker. She pointed out that she shows the core values of being honorable, sincere, and trustworthy. Hunter Nicholson by Mrs. Jackson for his hard work and improvement. Daniel Dalhousen for Mr. Keating for being reliable and hardworking. Autumn Mary was actually selected by 2 teachers, Mr. Fieldhouse and Mr. Keating, and they both talked about how consistently excellent she is in everything that she does. Ashley Airy was recognized in geometry for continued hard work. David DeMarco was recognized by Mr. Fieldhouse by going above and beyond. Greg Bullis was recognized by Mrs. Volker for always being there when someone needs him and always being very positive. Kaylee Hamby was recognized by Mr. Griezmer for academic excellence, and Rebecca Harrison was also recognized by Mr. Griezmer for the outstanding job she does as a student in his class. So those are our distinguished students for this month. Also, just briefly, want to congratulate Alex Pieser and Mitch Sanders, who on Saturday qualified for this week's OHSAA State Championships, this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at the Schottenstein Center at The Ohio State University, and also would like to congratulate Coach Rule and his outstanding coaching staff for the work that they do with our wrestlers. We're very proud of them. Last Friday, we had a signing ceremony for Kaylee Hamby, who was one of the captains on our volleyball team this year, and Kaylee has signed a letter of intent to play volleyball at Capital next season, so she'll be a Capital Crusader. We're very proud.
Thank you and congratulations to all those outstanding students. Next on our agenda, Mrs. Matthew has a board legislative update.
The state is still getting their footing, but really the only thing I have to report is that they have reappointed their finance committees, which obviously is one of the most important things we have to pay attention to. I think the significant thing is that they put all previous people pretty much back in their spots. As you know, Huck and Patterson have been working last year on the funding formula, and the concern was that all that work would go for naught when the new governor stepped in, and it seems like they're committed to finishing that work up by replacing them, and so that should be good for most public school districts moving forward. That's all I have today.
Thank you. Mr. Sedevy, you have an Auburn career update?
Yes, I do. On the 20th of February, Auburn had a National Technical Honor Society event, and there were 4 Newbury students that were honored at that event. 3 juniors and 1 senior. Mallory Eggleston, junior, and she was honored for sports medicine. Caleb Grubbs, junior, for culinary arts. Liberty Mosher, junior, for emergency medical services. And Sarah Zembiak, senior, for teaching professions pathway. And I'd like to congratulate those students for their diligence and their work.
Thank you. I don't think we have a Black Knight parent report, is that correct? Mrs. Morris, do you have an NNA report?
My name is Sonia Morris. I'm the Newbury Education Association president, representing both certified and classified staff. I addressed the board last month to share the response from staff on the board's decision to do a territory transfer to the West Geauga School District, which includes an agreement to lay off the vast majority of Newbury staff prior to the territory transfer. We believe this decision is not only a disservice to your teachers and staff, who have dedicated themselves to the district in so many ways, but a disservice to the current Newbury students. This territory transfer means the loss of a foundation for our students who will lose their school, many of their classmates, and almost all of their teachers and staff. There's a foundation of trust and a powerful relationship that teachers and staff have built with our students over the years. It is imperative that you respect that relationship and work in negotiations to protect the students in this district that you serve. Again, we ask you to consider your staff, who have been dedicated to the board, our students, and this community for decades. In this time of turmoil, and constant change, we feel that our continued presence in the transfer of our district is key to a successful transition for students. So please negotiate the terms of this transfer with us in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Morris, and that concludes my part of tonight's agenda.
Okay, on to the treasurer's report and recommendations.
Madam President and members of the board, I would like to recommend the consent agenda items A1 through A4.
Is there a motion? So moved. Second. Any discussion?
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Mr. Sedity?
Yes.
Mr. Simpkins? Mrs. Zoll?
Yes.
Madam President, members of the board, I would like to recommend the motion to approve the February 2019 financials, and just a little synopsis of what happened this month. Revenues were down about $70,000 from last year. We were expecting a Medicaid reimbursement that we have not yet received. We were also expecting a payment from Cardinal for some shared services that we have not yet received. Expenditures are up this month due to the expenses for the well, but we are going to be submitting those to insurance very shortly.
Is there a motion? So moved.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Mr. Sedity?
Yes.
Mr. Simpkins? Mrs. Zoll?
Yes.
Madam President, members of the board, I would like to recommend the approval of the resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor. I attended the tax budget hearing last week along with Mrs. Matthews and Dr. Hoynes, and they did go ahead and certify our rates. So now we have to pass a resolution to bring it back to their committee.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. I did hear how it went, and it was tests, but you did a fantastic job, so thank you very much for all the work you did on that. No, just steal this girl. Did a really good job in front of that board.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Mr. Sedity?
Yes.
Mr. Simpkins? Mrs. Zoll?
Yes. Okay, moving on to the Board of Education report and recommendations. I am going to do a territory transfer update, but before I do, I just wanted to reflect on our district's continued loss that we've experienced since the last meeting, two alum that have passed away tragically, and I can't say enough about how our hearts as a board, but as a community, have been with all of the families and staff and students that this loss has affected. And I know Jess was a rec board coach as well, so I just wanted to take a minute and say a few words about that. Okay. Now, moving forward in the territory transfer update, we do understand that this is a difficult time for our staff and the concerns they have about finding future employment. We recognize the quality of our staff and helping them in their transitions. So we have employed HR experts to help the staff update their resumes, as well as offering an interview help session this week. As expected, some staff have begun to locate employment outside the district. And as we've discussed earlier in the process, losing some of them during this transition process was unavoidable. The board is committed to maintaining quality education as we move through these anticipated phases of the transfer. We recently received numbers surrounding open enrollment to Berkshire and West Geauga for next school year. So I wanted to update you that there have been 59 new applications filed with West Geauga and 7 new applications that were filed with Berkshire as of this week. This number doesn't include already established open enrolled students in these districts. Whether staff are taking advantages of new employment opportunities or families are choosing to make this transition through open enrollment or homeschooling, parochial schools, or remaining in this district, these are all individual choices, and we will continue as a board, and our administration will continue to evaluate these factors as we move through the process. As Dr. Hoying stated, we are keeping the website updated with any news of pending transfer, territory transfer, and there are those Q's and A's that have been recently added. So I'm just going to highlight just a few. I know you guys are going to be able to reference these on the website, but I did want to just hit some of the highlights so that you can understand what kind of Q's and A's we'll be posting there. So one of them is the question, why can't the residents of Newbury vote on the ballot for the direction of our district, Independence, Berkshire, and West Geauga? So school districts don't have statutory authority to have what's known as an advisory election, i.e. choosing from different options, A, B, or C. This has been settled in law for a number of years. The only authority for any type of vote in the RC is 33-11-22, and it is the referendum on the ESC resolution to approve a territory transfer. In continuing that conversation, why are we considering a territory transfer and not a merger or consolidation? The board decided in a public meeting last spring to contact every school district that's contiguous to Newbury to see if they were interested in having these discussions with Newbury for a merger, consolidation, territory transfer, all of those options that are in place. West Geauga and Berkshire were the only two districts that were willing to engage in this discussion with Newbury, and only if it was considered a territory transfer. So while there are multiple ways to employ a territory transfer, the decision was made to use the ESC model. And just one more, there was, one more is fine. Has the district given the building and property away in the territory transfer? So legally, we will be following the RC that outlines what happens with the property and structure. In a territory transfer, the building and property do belong to the receiving district. At this time, West Geauga schools are expressing that they do not have a specific purpose for the buildings and are willing to meet with a joint board meeting between the Newbury Board of Ed and the Newbury Township trustees to discuss those options further with the building and property. When we have an update of the timing of when those meetings will take place, we will notify the public so that they can attend. So those are just an example of some of the Q's and A's that will be addressed on the website, and I know some of them are going to be sent out in our nightlines, and we just recently submitted one to be sent out in the next couple of weeks, so you can anticipate that as well. An update on the master plan. I know some residents had attended the last West U board meeting, which was on February 25th, and they had a presentation regarding their master plan for their new structure. So I wanted to give you some information here regarding that update. Over the past calendar year, a group of West Geauga residents and staff engaged in master planning to determine future facility needs. This group, the Facilities Planning Committee, met to assess the state of West Geauga's buildings and to discuss possible upgrades through renovations and/or new construction. BSHM Architects and Warner Concepts facilitated the master planning process. In addition to 5 facilities planning committee meetings, West G held 2 community meetings that were open to all residents. Questionnaires were completed by residents who attended to determine priorities and preferences related to the district's school buildings. On February 25th, 2019, the Facilities Planning Committee presented a recommendation to the West Geauga Board of Education at its regular board meeting. That recommendation was to build a new high school and middle school joined by an auditorium and performing arts wing and certain shared spaces like the kitchen, library, media center, and athletic facilities and field house. And then also to renovate the current middle school to house all elementary students pre-K through fifth on the main campus. The next steps in master planning will be for West Geogos Board of Education to study the recommendations of the Facilities Planning Committee, to accept and or modify that recommendation, and to plan a course of action and timeline for implementation. And that is the update that I have. Any questions?
Do they have a dollar amount?
That one that was formally shared with the board, I do know that they discussed it in their public meeting to their board.
So when are we going to hear that dollar amount is?
We're continuing, our next ESC meeting is March 20th. So I will continue to seek that information as it's finalized. I know that they did include the number of Newbury students in their planning after our resolution was passed. They did use our numbers, student numbers for planning purposes. Okay. Okay, is there any unfinished business to come before the board? Okay, any new business? And for public participation, I believe there was, is it Pat, is she speaking or is someone else speaking for her?
I'm here, but.
Okay.
Yes, each time we'll have the ones that we request.
My name's Pat Maher. Do I think my address?
Yes, please.
15961 Auburn Road. I've been employed at the school district as a bus driver for the past 22 years. I also work the kitchen. I've had various other duties as proctor. I've also been a Newbury resident and taxpayer for over 25. And with this territory transfer, I hear how we're going to be saving money, but I believe this will sadly only be a short-term saving. West G, I know, has plans for a new levy on this year's ballot. They also want to build a new school, which means construction bonds paid off by levies, and once the school is built, an operating levy to keep it up and running. The school property, I hear, is very valuable, and someone is sure to profit from such. But new development means improvements and additions to infrastructure, which would mean additional levy money needed by the township. In the long run, I foresee that we will be paying more of our hard-earned dollars in tax money, and the citizens of this community will not see any benefits derived from it. There must be a curse or a dark cloud hanging over Newbury. We can't maintain nor hold on to businesses. We couldn't fund our police department, and now we're losing our school district. Is the fire department soon to follow? I don't understand how 3 people can come in that were supposed to represent our school board and just destroy it. And we were a viable school district. I'm just blown away by this. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the board?
You want to go first?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Russ Handy. I live at 11149 Whitewood Drive, Newbury, Ohio. Been a resident of Newbury for 25 years. Just a few personal notes. Dr. Coynes, I want to thank you for attending my daughter's event a few weeks ago. I also want to point out that that was a school day, no school. There were no less than 25 people at an event for a student making a commitment to her next step in her education and her athletic career. That is the community that you represent. That is the type of student that you represent. Thank you very much for attending that and for the note that you sent Kaylee following up on that. Very much appreciated. Mr. Sanders, congratulations on your coaching career, your team, and specifically on your son qualifying dismal seasons in those years. Dan Jones is the same man in that locker room in a dismal season as he was in the season this year, where they had more success than they had in several years. So congratulations to Coach Jones. And again, that is the quality of individual that is in this school, spending time with our students, with our kids, and in our community. My question, and thank you, Pat, because you basically stated what my question was going to be about the implications of West G's growth in our taxes. So thank you for that. But I have another question. We effectively are in a lame duck situation. We have teachers looking for other employment, which is one of the hallmarks of this institution. We have put our students in a lame duck situation on a deal that may not go through. I work for an international corporation. I run 4 businesses for that corporation. Every one of those businesses has a contingency plan. And I'd like to know, does this board have a contingency plan in the event that that West G deal does not go through? That was a yes or no question. Is there a contingency plan?
Mr. Mayor, we are not required to respond to you. This is for us to hear.
Awesome. Well, keep going.
They just did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our tax dollars.
Okay, listen, we hear the public, this is for their time for us to hear them. We respond, we have been discussing taxes, we've been discussing the plans for this district every single month for the last year. So we do give that information. Thank you for your comment. If there's any more, we're willing to listen.
Absolutely, because I have a contingency plan to be considered.
We'd love to hear it.
Okay, that'd be awesome
Okay.
too. So the Ohio Department of Education and the Center for Education Policy Research, which is based in Harvard, has reached a deal to address the needs of rural school districts. It's a $30 million deal. The districts that are selected for that program collaborate, they share data. It appears to be a very fluid program to address exactly what's going on here, which is how do you continuously improve in a very, very difficult situation to improve it. Declining enrollment, smaller districts, all of those issues that we deal with here at Newbury. So are you familiar with that program? And is that a consideration for a contingency plan for the school district in the event that the West G deal falls through?
My response to that would be that if you have any details regarding any of these suggestions, please forward them on to Dr.
Will
Hughes.
do. I got them off the worldwide interwebs, so they gotta be true. So,
Wonderful. Thank you.
I believe enrollment started to
Okay, anyone else?
I'm Phil Paradise, 11621 Beacon Road in Newbury. I didn't prepare anything, and actually everything I was going to say, you guys both just said, besides congratulations, obviously, to the students and whatnot. I guess for Mrs. Hoynes, I have not checked the website yet that has the tax implications for the changes. I'm wondering if we're going to put on the proposed, at least what was put in the paper, was $50.7 million building. Is that going to be figured in, or are we going to be able to calculate that as well to find out what our tax increase will be in the coming years if that goes through? So, you know, obviously we have the taxes we have now and everything, but the increase, I want to know if that's going to be put in there as a, you know, try this out and see what this works as well. I think that'll be helpful for everyone. So that's it.
Thank you. I am going to just take a second. The Q's and A's do address the taxes. I know all three of you have mentioned that. I didn't address it because I know that there are different opinions about those statements, but they will be addressed. Ms. Sustar attended our work session on November 29th and discussed the millages and how that was going to impact Newbury taxpayers in the event of a transfer. So that was discussed there, and as information becomes available when it comes to their bond issue or the specific amounts or how that's going to impact. I know West Geauga and us are committed to bringing that information when it's available.
Is that going to be before West Geauga and the ESC votes or after?
The calculation of what the
Yeah, I mean,
villages.
when are we going to have more concrete information before any ESC vote or West Geauga vote is taken?
I think Sarah was.
Like
when I-
what their future levies are going to be, what their future bond issues are going to be.
I think that they can do the best they can with the information that they have. So it's just like any other district, we wouldn't be able to, remaining independent, we wouldn't be able to give that exact amount today either. I think
Yeah,
there are
but we
planning
know what our
processes.
tax rate's going to be with the renewals and everything else, and we know how far out that is.
Well,
You
The
know,
auditor's office wasn't able to add it to their website because they didn't have an amount yet, so until I think they know those amounts, then they would.
right, and I guess my question is, and I'm not trying to be difficult, what I'm trying to say is, are we gonna have the information before the ESC votes? Yeah, at least a close approximation.
we're requesting that they close. He was
I mean, you have to remember, West Geauga just failed to renew. I mean, they're looking, quite honestly, a little more bleak than we are financially. If we were to stop talks right now, we can go to 2023. And especially with the upcoming cuts and everything else, we can go farther out. And with the declining enrollment, with open enrollment, you know, being a popular thing, we can sustain now for quite a while, even without the renewals. So I'm just concerned that once, if we don't get a fixed target of, okay, they're talking 70 million, there's gonna be a bond issue. There's gonna be operating levies, which is fine. I get that, and if we're gonna move forward, I'd rather see that move forward now so we have all the information before the school's taken away from us, then there's no out.
I believe that we're receiving that information when it's available.
The update was that they just got the recommendations, now they have to talk about this at board.
And we have to keep in mind, they've started this process before this
Oh, no,
conversation. So they're just continuing through the process as we join them in the conversation. They're still continuing forward, just like we've been through this with other districts. Everybody has to continue educating and moving forward. So they're continuing that process, and as soon as that information is available, they will be sharing it with us. That's why I wanted to bring the master plan as soon as they presented it to their board. I wanted to bring what details I get to you guys as well. Okay, any other, are we?
Jim Battaglia, 14915 Ravenna Road. The interesting part about being a bus driver, my other drivers back there, is the years that we've had, the miles that we put on, and the people we get to meet. We've watched our kids grow, flourish, and I'm in my second generation of kids that I've had on my bus. And it's actually quite rewarding. But the great thing about being a driver is the people that you get to meet. The people that I have met is unbelievable. You're not only seeing other districts, other drivers, you're meeting parents, you're meeting people. When you wear this shirt and it says Newbury on it, the first thing they do is they walk up to you and they go, "I'm sorry for everything that's happening to your district." And I'm sitting here listening to all these people that kept saying, our taxes are gonna go down, you're gonna have a job. And that's not the case, because I'm listening to you guys up here right now saying how bad our taxes are gonna go right through the roof. Okay, fine. But there's a couple questions, and one is the drivers. Our drivers talk to other districts, talked to other people, and it has been brought up, and the question I'm asking is, do you plan on riffing any of our drivers in April, or all of our drivers, and then only rehire back, which you absolutely have to have?
That is the first that I'm hearing of that.
It's the first you're hearing that. The other thing is are you going to allow West G to come in here and bus the students that have open enrolled in their district?
That's the first I've heard of that, and the answer would be no.
Okay, at least I,
And Kim, for your first question, I do not plan on roofing drivers at this time. I for sure am not planning on recommending roofing all of them and then hiring back what I need. But after looking at unenrollment, I can't sit here and promise that there will be zero roofs when we look at routes, if our routes are consolidated.
but I know that this happens in April, isn't that correct?
The May meeting.
The May meeting? Okay, so
And-
by then you would know if you were going to rip anybody or not.
And I would meet with you before that. The drivers as a group, just like I did with the teachers and everybody else.
Well, I thank you for your honesty.
I do want to talk about again, with its taxes. I don't know where the indication that our taxes are increasing comes from. The millages going to West Geauga are estimated about 15 mils lower than where we are now. And with the proposed bond issue, from my understanding, it's not, 1 mill in Newbury generates about $150,000 at our current property values. So when you're just generalizing it, it was, somebody correct me, I know Sonya's in the room, Berkshire's bond issue was for how many million? 40? No, 28 million. And it was 3.6. Okay, so let's, for argument's sake, say that it was 4, and they're paying for half of it, and say the other half. So, okay, so for argument's sake, let's say it's 10. This is all just generalizations, just so you can kind of wrap your head around this. We got 5 mils that they're paying. Let's say that's more than they're paying, but let's just say it's 5, and the state's picking up 5. That's 10 mils right there for a K-16 through 12 facility. The property values are lower in that district than they are in this district. We generate more per mill than Berkshire does. So it wouldn't take us, that much millage to do that same amount. So even if the buildings were the same exact price, and we're over-exaggerating that price at 10 mils, we're still up 5 mils, because we're 15 mils higher than the current West U district. That's a complete generalization, just to kind of wrap your head around what that could look like. That's not saying that's what it will look like. That's kind of based on our closest example, which is happening right now in Berkshire, and then let's bump that number up for posterity. I mean, if you're $150,000 per mill times 15 mils, which is what would be saying, let's say we just bump it back up to what we currently pay. So 15 mil bond issue at $150,000 a mil, you're talking about one of the most premier facilities this county would have ever seen. It doesn't make sense to think that the taxes would skyrocket.
Just a little addition onto that. I mean, when you're comparing it to Berkshire though too, Berkshire has the funds that are coming in, those additional funds from the OFCC. And although the House bill is still there, that it would be available potentially for other districts, that if they consolidated and that happened, but it's not guaranteed.
Right.
So the $50 million building might cost
Right.
$50 million, that's all I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying. That would be, let's say, worst case scenario, let's say it took 5 and 5 from the state and Berkshire. That's still 10 mils
same building for 10 mills is still less than what we're paying now to run this school.
Bottom line is that the millages going west to West Geauga decreased by 15 mills, just from us transferring to West Geauga School District. Yes, they are considering a bond issue for their new structure, so that naturally would increase that millage. We don't see it going to, anticipate it to go back up to 15 mills, which would be the exact millage that we would be paying now.
I guess right now, though, we're speaking out of, I mean,
She's saying, based on the amount of money that's produced by one mill, to increase, to have a bond issue
it
for
would be
15 mills.
unreasonable to think we would need 15 mills to build any facility.
But yes, we do not have any concrete numbers in front of us. Okay. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn to executive session to start preparing for conducting or reviewing negotiations, bargaining sessions, and conferencing with our attorney for pending or imminent court action?
So moved.
Mrs. Matthews? Yes. Mr. Sanders? Mr. Sedeby?
Yes.
Mr. Simpkins? Mrs. Zopp?
Yes. There is no motion or action called.